Good morning. I'm Jeremy Tucker, working with Southern California Edison. We have been working with SBS on upgrading our AUD system, moving to the latest version, AUD 8.2. I'll be presenting today with Tony Tricoli. Okay, so let's start out just a little bit about who we are. I'm Jeremy Tucker, as I mentioned. I'm a business operations advisor. Primarily, I work in programs and systems, and I was the distribution business project lead for this project. My background, I've been working for SoCal Edison for 13 years. I came in through the service planner development program. I was a planner for about 5 years, and then I moved into the systems, and I've been supporting AUD for about the last 7 years.
Been with Southern California Edison for about 25 years, and the bulk of that has been in the IT department supporting transmission and distribution. So Jeremy's been my customer for a very long time.
This is our core team for our project. We couldn't have done the project without these people. Just a few people I want to point out, the other business leads who are not presenting today. Michael Ratcliffe from distribution. Transmission, we had Kayleen Strong, and then our project manager from the IT side, Susanta Mishra. Our company, just a little bit about us, by the numbers who we serve. So we delivered more than 87 billion kilowatt hours of electricity in 2015 and powered a total of 15 million people. We serve 180 incorporated cities, 15 counties. Our service territory is 50,000 square miles. If you take a look to the right there on the map, we're the light yellow in kind of the southeastern portion of the state there. We serve approximately 5,000 large businesses, 280,000 small businesses. And just a quick look at our system, we have 12,635 miles of transmission lines, 91,000 or so miles of distribution lines, 1.4 million electric poles, and 720,000 distribution transformers and 3,000 substation transformers. So we have quite a few facilities. Quick look at our design organization. So the project was about AUD. So these are our AUD end users. We have primarily three design groups in distribution: local planning, technical planning, and new development planning. Local planning is just what it sounds like. It's local. So those are our district offices that are serving new business in the communities. Technical planning does all of our infrastructure work. So they primarily focus on new circuits, circuit upgrades, maintenance. And then we have our new development planning, which basically handles all of our new development, specifically new tracks. And then our design drafting groups are specifically just for drafting. So we actually have two groups that support the different business units there, and they are able to send out work in-house and have it done. We have our transmission design group, and then we also have contract design groups where we hire third-party contractors to do design work for us, and that workforce is almost as big or just as big as our in-house workforce. So if you look at the bottom there, we have approximately 1,500 or so designers and planners that are using AUD.
Yes, thank you. Why this project? Can we go to the next slide? We implemented the first version of AUD back in 2009. And with that version, we had a high degree of customization, which fortunately SBS has since put into their core product, but customization created problems for us in terms of support, patching, fixes, and that version of AUD was not integrated into our SAP product, nor our homegrown pricing product, which we call Design Manager. It was also not integrated into our customer service support system or our GIS. We also had, with that version of AUD, 800 plus custom Lisp routines that were developed over a period of time for various reasons. And so the combination of custom code, lack of integration, and individuals creating their own Lisp programs created for a problematic, at least from an IT perspective, a problematic system that was difficult to support. So if we can go to the next slide, that can tell you a little bit about the problems, but let me kind of bulk the problems into two groupings here. From a software obsolescence, if you fast forward from 2009 to where we were when we started the AUD 2020 version, the first version of our AUD, the 2009 version, really was now obsolete. In addition to the challenges that I mentioned in the previous slide, that it was heavily customized, and we were not able really to upgrade to new AutoCAD versions. The company was moving to a Windows 10 platform, and our old tool was not compatible with Windows 10. So we were not able to move our users to Windows 10 until we were able to upgrade AUD. It would not allow us to move to new hardware either, and that made it challenging for folks who were scheduled for a refresh. There was no more support for that version of AUD, and then we really wanted to pare down tremendously the number of Lisp pro routines that were out there. We didn't do it 100%, but we got a lot eliminated by putting it into the core solution. From a functionality perspective, users were having to use 3 different programs to complete their work. And so what we wanted to do is get towards a solution that we would be all inclusive in one solution, and they wouldn't have to bounce out of one application and jump into another. There was difficulty in sharing drawings, and with the addition of AUD and an introduction of Volt to Edison, we were able to have some configuration management around the drawings and the ability to share and have version control, which was absent in our previous installation of AUD. There were different standards of configuration between systems, and so we wanted to have continuity there. And there was unresolved issues that were not technically resolvable with the old versions. And so we really wanted to get to an integrated, single platform, version control solution that was one solution for all our designers and planners and estimators. So that's what brought us to really moving towards what we call an AUD 2020 version, because that's when we went live.
Thanks, Tony. With every project, there has to be a goal. And just as Tony kind of described, we were working in different systems, and, our number one goal, aside from, the technology problems, meaning, not able to upgrade to Windows 10 and, hand out new devices to our end users. The biggest goal was to bring everyone into one system. And that sounds easy, but that actually was a goal of the first project that we did back in 2009. We were wanting to bring, all of the design organization into one tool, and that included many of the same stakeholders that we had in this project, meaning transmission, and then you have the design drafting groups who were using the UDS product. And despite all the effort, we failed to get user adoption from those groups, 10 years ago. And so that was a big priority moving into this project, was to move them, get full user adoption and get everybody working in the same system again. As you can imagine, one of the problems, the big problems that we had was custom code in Lisp, and those were things that prevented us from moving forward in versions throughout the years. So that was a big goal, to try to get rid of those things and put ourselves in a better position for being able to maintain the system and sustainability. Utilize AUD and AutoCAD functionalities as much as possible. While the Lisp routines were cool, and optimize some functions. There are many ways to do things in AutoCAD, and we wanted to try to move back towards using the product the way that it lets you use it, the way that it was made to be used, without having to add a bunch of extra, custom things into it. We wanted to maintain flexibility so we could take in, AUD core product builds, and actually, I think we've taken in 3 or 4 already just over the course of the project. So I feel like we've done a good job in that area of being able to do that. One of the other big things was to standardize design across all organizations. And this really was a problem, and it's kind of interesting to note that we didn't really have a formal design standard or drafting standard written across all our organizations. So we did have like a third party applicant design standard, and that is kind of was the unwritten unwritten standard for that everybody kind of followed, but not all the systems that we're using, meaning like AUD 2009 or the UDS product, or even some of the standalone users on AutoCAD, were all following that standard. So this was an opportunity, moving everybody into the same tool, to configure the tool to our standards and kind of enforce our standards that way by handing the tool out to getting user adoption from everybody. One of the other big goals was to make decisions to benefit the whole and not just the individual groups. Everybody, all our different design groups, have different ideas of how work should be done, how maps should look, how what kind of things should appear on the map. And it was really hard to get everybody to agree on what that should be. And so we really put a focus on not just trying to cater to one group or the other for like their individual needs, but to really take a holistic view and look and see how the things that we're adding or taking away from the tool affect all the user groups that would be coming into the tool. And then one of the other goals was try and only do what really belongs in AUD. We did have a lot of other things that were customized into the tool that probably really didn't belong in there. And one of the big things that sticks out was meter service order creation. We had some really customized code to interact with two different systems in our tool set to be able to create meter orders when we're pushing data from material data from AUD back to our pricing tool. And that just really caused a lot of problems and really made us take a look at like, okay, what tasks really need to be happening in AUD? And of course, with any project, you want to address some of the major pain points from the old system. There were, many things that were wrong or just kind of patched up, and we were, just trying to keep the thing running. One of the big things that stuck out that was a real problem for us was material submission. We had really large projects where we could have up to 100 stations of material on a project, and that could take up to 5 hours for it to push from one system to the other. And so that was a really big pain point for us. So that was one of the things we were really hoping to improve upon in this project. One of the other big overarching goals was the ability to leverage our GIS and to really take that first step into being able to push data back and forth between design and GIS. Our GIS system has been up and running for quite some time, but we didn't have the tools on the design side to leverage any of that data. And so this project's been kind of a long time coming for that. It's always been in the roadmap to be able to do that. And so that was one of our big items to check off for this. And then last of, definitely not least, we wanted to empower the business to have more control over the tool. One of the major things that we struggle with is our IT process and just the amount of time and effort it takes to get small updates done within our tool. And we are on a monthly release cycle in a small, equivalent of a small model data update. We have to wait a month to get that, and we want to be able to have more flexibility to be able to get those updates out to the end users quicker. Next, we want to talk a little bit about the experience that we had on the project. It's been just about 2 years, I think, now on the project, which sounds like a really long time for a delivery time for SBS, and it is, but there's a lot of things that we kind of encountered, and we are, to be honest, our company is so big and there's a lot of red tape, and it's kind of like working for the government. So some things take a little bit longer, but we wanted to share our experience. I know that I came to the PUG back in 2017, was my first one. That was just when we were exploring if we were going to move to the AUD product, and that really just opened up my eyes to what the new product offered, and having these presentations by other customers who had just finished or were going through implementation were very helpful to me, and to know what's coming ahead and to try and prepare us for this project. So I hope that you guys will kind of find our experience helpful if you're considering using the product, and some things that you might want to consider beforehand, and also just getting yourself prepared. So, our SBS configuration team, lucky guys. Jim Lucas was our template configuration master. Joe Chandler handled the UDH EAM and Vault implementation for us. Thomas Fung, UDH GIS master. All great guys and very good at what they do. All right, getting started.
Thanks,
Tony?
Yeah, I want to echo kudos to the three guys that helped us out, Joe, Jim, and Thomas. They were excellent in helping us get through all of that. Getting started. Typically at Edison, as Jeremy mentioned, it's a big company, and when we started the project, we were very much a waterfall project. But going into this, we did not want to replicate revisit some of the problems or challenges with waterfall that we had before. And primarily was the gap between the time we finished our traditional requirements documentation and the time where we provide a working solution to the customer. There typically is a gap there where business was not involved, right, wrong, or indifferent. And either organizations change, people change, or thinking changes, and then the solution that gets delivered isn't what is expected by the customer when they receive it. We wanted to eliminate that gap. So we went to what we refer to as a semi-agile approach. And that was after putting in or installing a working integrated vanilla AUD product in our system. We'll make sure that all the integration was involved. What we did is we broke down what our scope needed to be into approximately 27 or 30 functional components. And in an iterative process, I say we, but it's really Jeremy's team and Jim's team, built that in an iterative process until that functionality was working. And what really helped here was reducing the amount of documentation that was needed to get through our processes. And when a particular functionality was finished, we leveraged videos in lieu of some paperwork or documents. And at that point, we knew what the requirements were because we had a working prototype of that particular functionality. And so what was really delivered to our test team was a functioning module, so to speak, that had proof through a video, and the requirements were provided by the business that represented what the working prototype was. And so it made it very easy to hand that over to a testing that would test that module. And as the modules kept coming through, like on a conveyor belt, the system testing was able to then start testing end-to-end processes once all the pieces were in place. We'll go to the next slide. Getting through our gates at Edison, in order for a project to get from conception all the way to implementation and stability, there are several IT check gates that need to be presented to a committee and approved. And our approach made it easy for us to get through these gates because we were delivering working prototypes with videos. And so what we did is we asked our system test team, which I'm going to give a plug to USCAT here, which helped us very much, is we provided a working prototype and a proof of video, and all the system test team needed to do was replicate that video and ensure that they could recreate what has been created by Jeremy and Jim's teams. From an SE perspective, there are requirements that we had to meet, which were the typical test cases, performance metrics, or business requirements, which we all met, but in our case, we met it in a different form. We leveraged a lot of videos, and I keep saying that because it really saved us time. And from an SBS perspective, there was a lot of help in terms of knowledge transfer and helping us identify the pain points and agreeing to how we're going to configure the product so that we solve the problems and meet our requirements through configuration and not through customization.
All right, next is getting to work. And, once we kind of got the project getting off the ground, it was time, to really dig in and start doing the work. And on this slide, under these first 4 points here, I deliberately picked the word painstaking because I don't want there to be any illusions of how hard it is to go through some of these things and to do them, but really want to show by the time we're done what the benefit was of that hard work. And from the beginning, when we showed our systems and you saw that list of that we had 800 plus list routines, and I know that this is a common problem in many companies where tools have been customized, or end users are pretty savvy and write Lisp, and then they get attached to them, and making it a priority as part of our goal to try to eliminate some of these things out of the program was hard work. We literally took months of just going through those Lisp routines, meeting with the stakeholders and dispositioning them to this is how AUD handles it now, or you could do this with AutoCAD core functionality, or does anybody even know what this one is? Does anybody use this one? And there was lots of back and forth on that. And it's kind of like trying to take someone's favorite toy away from them, because they love it so much, and it was really hard work to do that. And Jim and the team were very supportive in that. They helped us in that process, and we did the lion's share of that, but took the ones that we couldn't figure out or didn't really know what to do with at the end, and took them to Jim, and he helped us work through those and come up with some ideas and solutions. And for some of them, even there's been some core product enhancements to facilitate some of those things, which is great that everybody gets to share in that functionality now across all the AUD users. We didn't get rid of all the lists completely, but we took it from the 800 plus to, I think we have less than 20 now. And most of those are all compiled, and they facilitate a layer processing routine that we run. and we are still plan on working on trying to get rid of that also and move it more towards just a AutoCAD, some more AutoCAD functionalities for that. One of the other painstaking processes was going through our material. We have almost 4,000 CUs, and we needed to figure out, okay, how do we organize all this stuff into models, and what material is good so that when we do our filtering, you know, what gets recommended and what should just be compatible. And so there was a ton of work that went into that. Many hours of just going through design standards manuals and looking up current material numbers, and you know, working towards getting a nice clean list to start from. I had mentioned earlier, you know, our design standards were kind of all over the place, and the processes between all the design groups. We put a lot of work into that, meeting with everybody and saying, hey, well, I know you do it this way, but and they do it this way. What if we meet in the middle and we do it like this? And that was just, it was almost painful going through that. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, it was worth it because now everybody's doing it the same way. Painstaking process of creating something out of nothing. And I think I only need to say one thing, and most people who have AUD will know what I'm talking about, pole heads. And I'll just leave it at that. We didn't have any existing pole heads, you know, as compatible units or anything like that. So we had to create all our models from scratch. And that was a ton of work. From an SBS perspective, the way that we worked with SBS, they set up monthly workshops with all of our SMEs. We gave out project laptops with AUD and our SE configuration to all of our SMEs, so that as we're doing the development, they could actually go on their test laptop and do, you know, test out the new functionality as we put it, and they can give us feedback on it. We had 1 to 2 hour working sessions 3 times a week with our business leads. We really carried the lion's share of the configuration just due to resource restraints. And then SBS delivered frequent builds with newly configured functionality for testing. Sometimes, you know, it was 1 build a week or 1 build every other week. Sometimes it was 2 builds a week or 3 builds a week, depending on what we were working on. And the way that we kind of kept track of all this, we had a shared list of all the items that we were working on. As things, you know, there were things that needed to be changed or added, we'd put it on the list, and then we just kind of managed it back and forth together through that. And then one of the things, like I said, that just really benefited the whole process was, you know, we had a semi-working base within the first month to start using and get familiar with the tools. So what I mean by that is, as you know, within that first month, we had a product that looked like it had SCE things, specific things in it. It looked familiar, you know, to our users. We have a lot of our symbologies were in there. A lot of our compatible units were in there. And so just getting that off the ground really helped in the process.
Obstacles. None of your projects have obstacles, right? We had our fair share. So let me try and quickly go over some of them. The first was resources and acquiring resources for this project. Resources in terms of subject matter experts, and what we're talking about here are Jeremy's peers, various locations throughout our service territory. We ended up with about 20 subject matter experts, but in order to accumulate or acquire those resources, we had to go to the sponsor and ask for their time, which was difficult. One of the things we found that helped was because Jeremy's team and his peers were supporting, they support multiple projects, not just AUD. They support other in-flight projects. They support Design Manager and other products. So one of the things we found helpful is to present a global ask from an IT perspective as to all of the things Jeremy's boss, in other words, was supporting. And so they could see not just the support that we needed on AUD, but all of the other 8 other projects that they were supporting. And so they could see and make the decision as to whether they give us 20 part-time people or 5 full-time people. And that made it easy for them to make a decision. So that was important to us. As a utility, and in California with the wildflowers, we have a lot of people who are supporting wildflowers, and that is priority 1. So there were some cases where our people were pulled away to work on that, and that was challenging. There was a limited amount of time that the SMEs were allowed to support AUD, which also made it challenging. At the beginning of the configuration process, there was no reprieve for their full-time work. And so AUD was either overtime or above and beyond their call of duty. It wasn't until we made it very clear to supervision that, hey, look, if we don't get this allocated time, we're not going to make the date. Then we were able to get some full-time support. We had, Jeremy mentioned earlier that this was almost a 2-year project, and I would say that at least 6 months or more was not related to the AUD project. There were obstacles and delays that we made that were outside of our project controls. We had limited test environments. It's like having 2 ovens and trying to bake 20 cakes at once. Everybody's jockeying for an oven, and we were one of those cakes trying to get baked, and there were limited amount of ovens. So we were able to negotiate a piece of this oven and a part of that oven to be able to do our development. We had difficulty onboarding an OCM. If anything, I can recommend anything is onboard your OCM person early, because we kept onboarding people and they kept getting stolen for higher priorities. And so that was challenging for us. It caused some delays. Completing system testing and functional testing while still developing. We were unable to do some of the end-to-end testing because some of the modules that required end-to-end testing were still being baked. So that did make it a little bit difficult. We had a challenge in the sense that we were trying to please too many folks. When bringing organizations together to use a common tool, each of them also brings their preferences. And so we ended up deploying AUD to Edison folks on their laptops, but to contractors on Citrix. And in retrospect, what we ended up doing is causing more work for the IT organization. And so there's one thing we might have changed, in hindsight is 2020 here. Choose one deployment approach. And we also paired up deployment of Windows 10 in conjunction with the deployment of AUD during the COVID era. In retrospect, we should have just said, Windows 10 team, do your thing, deploy your laptops, and we'll come up behind you and we'll add to that when we're ready, the AUD. COVID didn't make it easy because we had a training schedule set up for in-class training, and then we had to switch gears and do virtual training. So this, since March of last year, right when COVID hit, and all of these other things were happening, we had, yes, the project was 2 years in duration, but I guess at least a third of that had to be to things that were outside the project that didn't would not normally have delayed the project if we were in a non-COVID environment without conflicting projects.
Yep. So, kind of like Tony mentioned, we had a bunch of different obstacles, and one of our biggest obstacles was, resources and being able to get people's time, and it just wasn't happening. So we had to get creative with some of the things that we did. It may not sound like, I use the term creative and you're like, oh, it's going to be this, thing, but it wasn't like super creative, but it was definitely necessary. We we actually hired an ex-Edison employee who used to actually do the job that I'm doing now out of retirement as a contractor, because that's just how desperate we were to get some knowledge that could come in and be and have an immediate impact, you know, in helping us. We also had to reach out for other project support people through hiring contract workers too, just because there just wasn't the resources available within the company at the time. As Tony mentioned, SBS helped us out in recording functionality specific demo videos, which really helped us a lot in writing, writing out our business documentation, and also for the system testing team. One of the things that I think had probably the biggest impact, in helping us was we actually got the recommendation of hiring US CAD, and we'll give a little shout out to US CAD. They were great. They have a lot of experience with AUD, and so they were able to come in and help us. They took the videos that we SBS produced for us and turned them into testing scripts, and using those and the business requirements that we wrote, they made the scripts and did all the functional and system testing for us. And then, after doing all that testing, they knew our business and our system so well that we actually hired them to be our professional training leads for our training classes. Getting to the configuration finish line, at some point, you just have to realize really where you're at, and you have to pick what's going to make it and what isn't going to make it. We had a ton of work that went into at the end to getting our engineering approvals. So there was a lot of back and forth with engineering, and they wanted a ton of different scenarios ran and things like that, calculation reviews and things like that. So, that took up a lot of our time at the end. And so it kind of really, dug into some of the things, took away from some of the other things that we wanted to do, because we had to spend a lot of time in that area. Also, like Tony mentioned, we had to make a plea to management for more support, or we were going to miss our date. It just finally came to the point to where, we just we weren't going to make it. And, we were running right up against another project that was going to be delivering, right after us. So we had to make sure that we didn't slip in our schedule. We were able to get 5 full-time SMEs for the last 4 months. And, I thought that this really stuck out to me, that 8 months, prior to us, getting those full-time SMEs, we had logged 150 items and worked them and completed them. And over the last 4 months, before go live, when we had those 5 SMEs, we more than doubled the amount of items that we logged, worked, and completed in that time. And so, up to that point, just because we had such a small team, we just had to keep moving forward. We developed something, do some high-level testing, looks good, and keep moving and developing. And it was really critical. It shows you how much comes out when you put in the proper testing for it. So just can't stress enough that you have the resources available that you need to do the testing as you go along. Just a high-level look at what we were able to finish. We finished, styling, layers, basic validations, annotations. It's sad that it can all be summed up in one word. Our annotations, we had a ton of work go into them, and they're pretty complicated, but also pretty cool at the same time. So, I didn't want to downplay it by just calling them annotations. Material ordering, material stationing, material submission, load calculator, contract costs is something custom that we did have to keep, that Joe actually built out for us as part of UDH. SAP asset info, we're able to actually reach out to SAP and to suck in asset data out of SAP and associate them to our features. Meter location info is kind of the same type of functionality. We have some GIS previews where we actually reach out and grab raster images from our GIS and are able to preview them before doing imports and things like that. GIS importing, cable pulling, voltage drop, flicker. So we did all of those engineering things. Layout templates, pole heads was big for us. That was totally new. We did some basic overhead engineering. We didn't really get full blown into that. And we have special rules that are specific to SCE on how we status our materials that affect go into our pricing tool when we move our material over to that. We did a basic configuration, a CAD convert to work with our applicant designs that come in, construction decals, and then we moved approximately 600,000 DWG legacy files either into Vault or into our enterprise archive as part of this. What we left on the table, detailed overhead engineering. Right now, SpiderCalc is our primary overhead analysis tool that we're using. So we just didn't have the time to get super detailed and felt comfortable with moving forward that way because with just a basic configuration of the overhead, because it's all being validated in SpiderCalc. But we do plan on building that out, moving forward. And specific overhead 3D blocks, we're just using some of the out-of-the-box blocks, and we plan on building those out. Automated single line, which is our circuit map data, single line import, importing small world data. I think right now that was one of our requests, and I think that they added that to the core product, is to be able to store some of that circuit data on your import. And we're storing it, but we're not doing anything with it. We didn't have time to finish building that out. And then split offsets. If you're not familiar with that, that's something that we requested too. But we have it, but we just haven't had a chance to, didn't get a chance to finish building that out specific to our applications.
How we did it. Well, I mentioned COVID, so we did have to, with a lot of help from our training lead and team, Rose, I don't think she's on the call, but I'll give her some kudos. She was able to transition from classroom training to virtual training. We ended up having the training hosted on Adobe Connect, and we had to have all training done within a certain period of time. So we had to conduct 3 to 4 concurrent classes of about 4.5 days each week for a period of about 3 to 4 months. I don't remember exactly, but we were able to do that. And the only way we were able to do that was to leverage the USCAD resources which we had brought on as testers. We brought them on as testers, thanks to Jim connecting us with them, to system test the product because they had AUD experience. And some of them had also some training experience. So we set up negotiated with them an arrangement such that they would come in and they would test the product, which would get them familiar with the Edisonized version of AUD, so to speak. And then once we went live, they transitioned from being testers into trainers. And one of the things that was asked of us this time around versus the previous AUD installation was that we used professional trainers. The first time, I think what we did is we took our subject matter experts and asked them to deliver the training. While they were very knowledgeable about the tool, they didn't have the teaching skill sets that was required or that was desired this time around. So we were able to leverage USCAD and their skill sets to not only test, but then deliver the training, which worked out really well. It was a good transition. We had a class of about 30, and one of the challenges was when people were sick or missed class, we had to quickly move them into a new class, because what we didn't want is a bubble of people that we wanted to train on the very last week right before training ended. So that was a constant thing that we had to IT the IT folks were available during class so that if we had any issues with either the virtual Adobe Connect or any of the virtual training, we were there from an IT perspective to support training. One thing I should mention is we leveraged the Citrix environment to conduct all training, both for the Edison employees as well as train the trainers for the contractors. We're not contractually allowed to train contractors, but we are allowed to train the contractor trainers, and we call them train the trainers. And that worked very well. And the other thing it did is it stabilized the Citrix environment, which contractors were going to leverage in production. We trained from January through April, and I mentioned the trainer contractors. So I thought training went very smoothly. It was a lot of material to put into 4 days. Don't know how we did it, but it did get done. And I thought it went pretty smoothly considering how much material we had.
Great. I know we're running up against time, so we'll just have a couple of takeaways here. And first off, Jeremy's takeaways. Familiarize yourself with the product as much as possible beforehand. If you're thinking of taking on AUD, get to know the product. Especially in my position, one of the things that really happened was everybody, just because I support AUD, for our company, everybody just expected that I already understood and knew the new product and what it could do and what it couldn't do and how everything worked, and that just really wasn't the case. I was learning as I went, just like everybody else, but with that expectation that I knew it, and also, kind of like Dennis was mentioning in his thing at the beginning, was just that there's a lot of things that you can do that you just don't know about, and so as much exposure to the product that you can get beforehand, the better. Like I mentioned before, talking about goals, decide what your goals are before you start and be realistic about it. I think this kind of goes with any project that you do, but that was especially a takeaway here, was that like once you really start seeing what the product can do, it's very easy to go down trails that you weren't necessarily planning on going down. And so really know what your goals are and try and keep your project rolling within those parameters. Familiarize yourself with the process before the project starts and decide how you address the differences from your process. So Tony kind of talked about how we deliver projects using the waterfall method versus SBS, kind of does that semi-agile approach. And to be honest with you, I just didn't really know what to expect because I never had done a project like that before. And so there was a lot of, decision-making things on how we were going to handle things like in the moment. And that can get to be kind of uncomfortable because you're wondering, am I making the right choice? Am I not making the right choice? So, really kind of understand how the process works before you get there. You'll hear this any PUG conference you come to, and anybody who's done an implementation says, do the hard work up front before the project starts. And, I heard it and I tried, but I didn't do as much as I would have liked to. And so a lot of those things that I listed before that said painstaking, those are the painstaking kind of things that you want to do before the project starts, and it'll make the project, it'll take a lot of pressure off you during the project, because I was trying to do all those things also while developing and, trying to manage 100 other things at the same time. Resources are key, just like with any project, you need people. And you got to just really go as hard as you can, and you need to have your management behind you to get you the resources that you need. I recommend having an IT project manager and a business project manager. Our model within our company for these software projects are we just have an IT project manager and the business does not. And that really would have helped us out greatly. I was having to do a kind of a dual role. I was, the subject matter expert. I was the project manager. I was, the engineer. I was the primary decision maker. There's just a lot of different things. So, having a business project manager to help, kind of handle some of those tasks really would have been helpful. The one thing, probably the biggest takeaway for me was you can do a lot with a little if you have the right people. And I think we proved that on this project. Really, all the things that you saw that we did and that we had to overcome. I mean, it was really that first list I showed you was everybody, almost everybody who worked on the project, but really the core of everything that got done was like 5 or 6 people, which is pretty impressive. And, you know, I would say, imagine how much you could do with a lot of the right people, because we did a lot with just a few people. Know your objectives and stick to your guns. You know, I'm not the most popular person in the company right now because of the approach that we took. You know, Edison loves the customization. Those groups loved all their extra little tools and everything that they did. And it's going to be a while before they adjust, you know, to the new tool and really see the benefit and get used to it. And, you know, kind of that initial shock goes away. But at the end of the day, I know that I did what was right for the company. And, you know, it put us in a better position for the future to be able to leverage, you know, to stay flexible and to be able to leverage new technologies as they come available and those types of things. Trust the process. This was, you know, something that we had to kind of adjust to. Again, like I said, you know, SBS is like, hey, tell us what you want, and here, let's show it to you. And, you know, there were a few times where, like, just because it was untreaded waters for me, where, you know, I was kind of like almost felt scared to say, hey, yeah, I messed up. You know, what are we gonna do about that? And really, you know, it didn't turn out to be as big a deal. Like you know, Jim and everybody was great. It was like, hey, you know, like, you know, we'll fix it. You know, that's just what happens. It's the nature of the project when you're developing, and, you know, when you're trying out new things that you haven't done before, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And you know, it's not set in stone. And, you know, the SBS really wants to make it right for you. And you know, by halfway through the project, felt very comfortable working with them and knowing that, hey, like, if there's something that's just not right, they're gonna, you know, that even if it was my fault and I told them something wrong, they're gonna, you know, make it right for us. And you know, that was very reassuring. Trust SBS; they know what they're doing. I can't say how many times, you know, me personally, I had to kind of like go to Jim and have him talk me down, and you know, to help sort through some of the things that, you know, we were running into, or, you know, issues, or how to, you know, how to proceed in certain functionalities and things like that. It was just really great to be able to know that you could go there, and that, you know, they're not just out to you know, they are out to further their business, but they're not just in it. The stake is not just for them. Like, they care about how how your product turns out, you know, and that you're satisfied with it, and that you're also doing the best thing for your company, which I think was kind of a surprise, even when we're working with other organizations within our company, that, you know, they would say, hey, you know, we see you're doing this like this, but it really would be better for your company if you did it like this. And it kind of shocked people, I think. And, you know, like, what's the angle? But there isn't an angle. They really do want you to, you know, have a better business and to be able to do work more efficiently. So, you know, I just can't say enough about that. And then, you know, last, have fun and make friends. You know, I consider, you know, these guys my friends now, and I hope that they, you know, they feel the same way. It was a lot of hard work. It was like kind of like going to battle together, but we had a lot of fun along the way. And, you know, that's what, at the end of the day, to me, the relationships that were built, that was, you know, one of the most satisfying things of the whole project.
I echo a lot of what Jeremy's saying in terms of friends and going to battle. It was a battle, but it was very rewarding. Real quick, sharing of resources made it difficult because the project always ends up shortchanged. I would rather have less resources that are full-time, as I think Jeremy mentioned earlier, than a lot of resources that were part-time, because the operation's always going to take precedence. And there was a lot of time that we lost because of that. So that's one thing I think I would hold our ground more is give me full-time resources to finish the project rather than We tried to please too many people. And I think by going to both local deployment and Citrix deployment, we basically doubled our deployment effort or work and or problems on the IT side. So in retrospect, I would choose one deployment method and go with that. And then I would do this again in a heartbeat, leverage industry knowledge. If we had to go out and bid for a testing vendor to come in and learn the Edisonized version of AUD and test it, we would have added 3 months to the project. By utilizing US CAD, they came in and they hit the ground running. And so I would leverage industry resources that know what you're doing and have the experience, and they'll try and teach a vendor to do something that someone else already knows how to do. So with that, I know we're probably over time. I'll cut that short.
Yeah, we did have Q&A, but we don't have time. The presentation will get sent out to everybody. I saw our emails are on the first slide, so feel free to reach out to us with any questions you may have. We'd be glad to answer them or have a phone call with you and talk about our experience on the project. And sorry for running late, but thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk to you guys today.
Yes, thank you.